Hello and welcome to Rick's RC Flying Channel. This is episode 2 of the PL-12 AirTruk fuselage. And since the original video, I have closed up the sides here because the entire hopper crop dusting system has been completed. So this area was closed up and that whole side. There you can see the two chutes on the bottom. In the middle, there's a diffuser box and then the hopper system there. That's where the material gets loaded. So both sides are closed up. And also I've been working on the panels and the doors. And this side here has basically been completed. So this just nicely drops in there. It's a really nice, tight, flush fit. And I had options installing this. And I mean, typically pretty well most PL-12s, they're hinged like this. I was really seriously thinking of going that route, but I thought with it sitting on the ground and this door open, it would be kind of awkward seeing and accessing it that way. I mean, definitely doable. And I could have possibly hinged it down this way. But I actually decided to install it as a panel. There are some PL-12s I've come across in my research that they just simply install them with the Zeus fasteners, which is basically like bolting it on. So I elected to go that route. I'll probably, during the scale work, I'll simulate some Zeus fasteners on the panel. What I elected to do, I mean, I could have used screws right into these attachment points. And quite frankly, there's nothing wrong with using like button head screws to screw a panel attachment. So typically, like aileron servos in a wing where you have a servo cover, you could use button head screws, because how many times do you access it? And quite frankly, anytime you do have a screw hole, it's a good idea to reinforce it with thin CA. Makes it very durable and long lasting. Now, I could have used that here. You know, the whole fuselage is going to be epoxy resin, which makes for a very durable finish as well on the panel here. But even then, this is really a true maintenance panel for me. I'll be accessing it 4 or 5 times per flight day because I have to change the batteries through this compartment here. Not to mention if I ever have to inspect or do any kind of maintenance on the motor, you know, I need this access. So this panel will be frequently used. And so instead of using the screw attachment points, even with an epoxy finish, it would have been reasonably long lasting. But what I ended up doing was I cut these areas out here, and this is 4mm plywood that has been completely recessed in here. And I'm going to use 256 bolts with blind nuts. So there's blind nuts installed behind these 4 lugs. So there's the 256 socket head bolt with the blind nut. And these are recessed. So the socket head bolt actually fits flush into the panel. So it makes for a very clean, nice installation. And it's extremely durable. Because it's a bolt nut system, basically with the blind nuts, you can open and close this forever. And you're really not going to wear anything out. So that's the route I decided to go. So this side has been completed. I've done work on the cockpit door, which I'll show you once I get the other side panel in here. I have already epoxied in the 5mm plywood lugs. And now this panel, which also has the inlays already epoxied in. And like I said, this being 4mm plywood, and it's like, I happen to use like 6 ply. I mean, the durability is unmatched. So anyways, I'm just doing the final fitting in here. And once I get it fitted nice, then I'll start drilling pilot holes in there and getting everything lined up. And I'll show you how I install the blind nuts on these 4 lugs. I thought I'd mention For those that maybe already saw the video that I have regarding setting up your work area, this here is basically a dust collector box, which I talk about in the other video. But I thought I would just mention, for those that did see it, obviously you can use the entire surface depending on what you're working on. However, here's just a little tip. If you're just working on a small piece like I am here and sanding it, you cover up half of it or whatever part you really don't need. What that does, it increases the suction in the area you're working. So again, when the vacuum is on, none of the dust actually surfaces or floats around, and any of the dust that does collect on it, all you simply do when it's on, take your hand and go like that, and it's gone. So anyways, I just thought I would mention that.
So here you can see I'm utilizing masking tape to secure the panel to the fuselage. This is to ensure that that panel does not move while the 4 holes are being drilled, and this will ensure a perfect alignment.
Now it's a little bit finicky, getting the blind nut at the attached to your bolt. So just take a little piece of tape, so both sides have the sticky side, and place your blind nut on your finger, and then bring it underneath, and then you'll be able to attach it. And another thing is, when you're installing blind nuts, make sure that whatever kind of bolt you're using, that you put a washer in. So as you tighten the blind nut up to the bottom of your plywood and you start bringing it in, because the little barbs at the end of the blind nut are going to start recessing into the wood, you don't want to damage the top, so you have to use a washer. Otherwise, the head of the bolt will start to penetrate the wood. Now, when you tighten your blind nut in there, you may have to use an Allen key just to get a little more torque than just using a typical socket head type screwdriver. And that way you can pull the blind nut right up flush against the wood. All right, so the port panel has been now installed, with the blind nuts and the 256 socket head bolts, and everything's nice flush mounted and properly fitted. And I fabricated a rear door, and it has been basically final fitted and hinges installed. It also, all the windows are actually framed in. So that's an actual frame, and then the Lexon, which is, basically like plexiglass, that will fit in there. And then I actually have outer frames, which then go on top, and basically the window sandwiched in between the frame, and makes for a very nice looking, clean fit. And then when it comes to scale detailing, the appropriate rivets, and everything is finished off. So it looks very much just like a real airplane. And so that kind of takes care of this side. And just to show you, these panels, they just virtually drop in, so it's very easy to do. And to install them takes just a few minutes. Now, one of the reasons that I use socket head bolts is because these panels will be taken on and off every time I go flying. And if you use Phillips or slotted common head type bolts, there's a risk of slipping when you're taking them on and off. And because I'm going to do it a couple of times every time I go out with the airplane, the chances of that happening with a socket head is really minimal. As a matter of fact, I can't even really remember doing that. But with a Phillips or slotted, you could slip and end up marring the fuselage. Now, there's no question there's other areas that a Phillips head, for example, is very appropriate. But in this particular case, because I take them on and off so often, I wanted the minimal risk of ever hurting the airplane. And the back of the blind nuts, there's a little bit of glue in there. I could feel it. It's cleared out now. The back of the blind nuts, I did put a little dab of epoxy, just as insurance that they never separate off the back of the lug. Especially if this is not gas powered, it's electric powered. So it's very little vibration, but definitely, gas powered airplanes, you got to take every precaution with risk of vibration effects. I have contemplated building, if this is if I'm happy with everything flying wise, I have contemplated building a bigger one. This is 1/5 scale and comes in at 100 inches wingspan. So quarter scale would even be slightly bigger. So there we go. Very easy to take on and off. The panels just drop in and out. So that's, and then there'll be a very final sanding around these clearance areas. Although it's a very nice fit, I will have to take a little bit more off prior to doing the epoxy resin work. Now, the other part that had to be fabricated, of course, is the cockpit door, which probably was one of the most challenging pieces. This fuselage really has very little flat areas. It's probably the flattest, and this here, but everything is either tapered or has compound curves in it. And the door, to say the least, it had curves in every direction. It's curved this way. It was curved this way, has a curve here and a different curve here and here as well. I mean, in every direction, it has some kind of compound curve. So it was a little bit challenging. The way I went about it is I took a piece of cardboard. The cardboard was about 1/8 of an inch thick. And I fit the cardboard in, and I actually attached it to the piano hinge. And I taped it down so it followed the frame and had the proper curve in it. And like the real airplane, it had basically like a stringer frame in here. Now these are made out of light ply. And what I did, on the outside of the cardboard, I started fabricating out of just balsa wood these frames, but I did it on the outside. So I kept shaping the balsa wood to take on the curvature. Now, once I established the exact curves, then I knew what I had to make on the inside. And once I was satisfied with all of that fitted, I then made a plywood door. And because I had the proper, I separated the balsa wood off the cardboard. I used, so little CA glue when I did the final fit, opening and closing the door and so forth. But now I had basically a template. And then I made these out of plywood. They're light ply. And this one here as well. And then I made this plywood door. And then, of course, made a window frame, made a door latch, and it still has to be soldered up and then finished off. And like I said, the socket head screws where you're taking something on and off often. But here's a perfect example where you would use a Phillip head screw, because that's actually what they used on the real airplane. So I'm just going to, oops, helps if I use the right Phillips screwdriver. I'm just going to temporarily screw this in here. Now, of course, they require nuts on the back. They're just kind of sort of, self-tapping in there. And there we go. The door's latched. Now there's 3 more that go in there. And when the nuts are on, it gets torqued in there. But it's a really nice fit. You can see the door takes the exact curvature of the frame. So once I get this all, when I had this all torqued in there, there was almost zero tolerance, and everything just fits so nice. And just to show you with the window just drops into the frame. There we go. And that's what it would look like with the window, and then an outer frame and a door latch. And this airplane will feature a full interior. The seat will be made like the real one, and instrument panel, because it's one of those ones that, the door opens, like on the real airplane, it actually opens into this position. So it totally exposes the interior of the airplane. Not to mention, it's got big windows, even with the door closed. You got a good view of the cockpit. So it's, well worth doing a fully detailed interior. Just not sure if I'm first going to do the maiden flight and then do the cockpit interior. Not really sure which way I'm going to do it. Sometimes I just go right ahead and totally deck out the airplane and then go do the maiden. Of course, it just makes things a little more nerve-wracking. Anyways, if you like the video, please hit like and or subscribe. And I've got a little bit more work to do on the fuselage. The nose wheel area will be the next video. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.